I welcome you all in this session. Topic of this session is agriculture sector goals. And in these sessions, basically we are going to discuss about different agriculture sector goals. What are the different goals we want to achieve in agriculture sector? And before going through the agriculture sector goal, first let us understand what are the role of agriculture sector in the country. So, first we will understand the role of agriculture sector, then we will move to the different agriculture sector goal. So, agriculture play a dominant role in the national economy in different way. Basically, it is a source of livelihood of about 22%, around 52% of total workforce of the country. So, it provides the livelihood security to about 52% of the workforce of the country, 52% of the population of the country. And this agriculture sector has a special significance for the low income section of the country, for the low skilled section of the country, or vulnerable section of the rural society, because they are totally dependent on agriculture sector for their income, for their livelihood, for their means of living. So, agriculture sector is very important for such vulnerable section of the rural society. And basically agriculture sector provide food to meet the expanding demand of the growing population. We are 1.3 billion people in the country. So, this sector provide the food to them, then it's provide the raw material to agro processing industry, then expand the capacity to absorb the monetary flow of industrial investment. So, sometimes someone want to invest some in agriculture sector, there is opportunities there. Then this sector also help in earning the foreign exchange through the foreign trade. So, we can get the foreign exchange earning in agriculture sector through the export. Then there are three types of contribution from the agriculture sector to the overall economic development of the country. First is the product contribution, second is the market contribution, and third is the factor contribution. And when agriculture grow, generally it make the product contribution, because there is a more production is there from the agriculture sector. So, it supply the product, the food and other consumption item to the industrial sector. Then the market is another important contribution. When it trade with the other sector, it renders the market contribution, because we have around 50% population who are totally dependent on agriculture sectors, and the production of the industrial sector, the servicial sector, they are taken or they are purchased by the agriculture population. So, it provides the market contribution to them. Then factor contribution, because it transfers the resources to the other sectors, particularly for the industries, it provides the raw material. So, it is a kind of factor contribution for the industrial sectors, non-farm sectors. Then in case of agriculture sector, when we talk about it, is we have the multiple goals. There are different goals in the agriculture sectors we want to achieve through the agriculture policy actions, and self-sufficiency in the food, and then the livelihood security we want to provide, particularly for the rural household. Then income and profit enhancement in the agriculture community, the farming community. Then we want to have a supply of cheap raw material to the agriculture industry. These are the major goal we can say in the agriculture sectors. And these sectors, or the goal basically facilitated in the development of the manufacturing sector. The agriculture sector facilitated the development of the manufacturing sector by releasing the workforce, by generating saving for the capital formation in the manufacturing sectors, because a lot of people are there in the agriculture sectors, and the work is only for seasonal, the employment is only seasonal. Remaining period they can go for the manufacturing sector as a labor, as a workforce, and whenever the income is there in the agriculture sector, this saving also goes for the investment in the industrial sector, in the manufacturing sector. Then there are many economists like Nakshe, Levis, or Renin and Fay. They said the surplus labor in the agriculture sector has a great potential for the development of the industrial sectors. And agriculture is basically a core of socio-economic development process of India, and therefore require necessary policy support. So, policy support is very important in agriculture sectors. Then as we have already gone through that, we have a number of goals in the agriculture sectors. and these goals may vary across the countries, and some part of the country we have different goals, like in case of the, we can say the good infrastructure is there for irrigation, they want to have more income, they want to have more productivity, but the area where the agricultural productivity is very less. So, there we want to have the non-farm activity to provide the income to the rural community. So, this goal may vary across the country, and difference in the goal between developed and developing country. Developed country, they have different types of goals, the developing country different types of goals, like in India. In 50s, 60s, we want to have the food security in the country, but in the developing world, developing country or developed country, they want to provide more income to their farmers. So, relevance of goal may change over the time, over the period of time. In the initial stage of or after the independence, actually self-sufficiency in the food grain production, it was the most important place, or it was given the major importance, but today actually we want to have protection of the farm income employment in the agriculture sector. This is the first priority presently. So, it may change over the place, over the time, and over the countries. So, goal may change in different places, and identification of goal is very critical for the formulation of the good agriculture policy. Actually, we have to fix our target while formulating agriculture policy. So, identification of hierarchy of the goals help in making the appropriate policy prescription. So, we can actually prioritize the policy goal, which policy goals we want to achieve first for the country development. So, this is identification of goal is very important, and the first goals, let us understand, in the agriculture sector is the self-sufficiency in the food grain, and we have 1.3 billion population in the country, and our goal is to provide them the food, sufficient food, and we can say this nutritious food we want to provide them. And for providing the food or nutritious food, we need to have self-sufficiency in the production of food grain. And we faced a severe food crisis before independence, and also during the first decade of economic planning in 50s and 60s, we faced severe food crisis. There was a shortage of food availability in the country, and in late 60s basically we have adopted a bold policy to achieve self-sufficiency in food grain production. Farmers were provided high-yielding variety of seeds, subsidized fertilizers, irrigation and other inputs along with the price support. So, we have 3-4 instruments of policy which we have implemented, providing the subsidies, for making available the our inputs for more productivity from the agriculture sector. And the India has achieved this goal of food self-sufficiency in the country after the Green Revolution. And some economists question the relevance about this goal of self-sufficiency in the food, keeping in view the current neoliberal trade regimes, globalization. Actually, instead of self-sufficiency, what they say, instead of self-sufficiency in food, self-reliance should be the main goal. And India hold comparative advantage in the production of horticultural commodities instead of the production of the cereals and pulses. There should import the cheap food grain from other country, and we should export the fruits and vegetable and flowers. This should be our policy. Import of food grain depend upon different factors, and particularly our capacity to export the items from this country to other country. And actually for that, if we want to import the food grains from other country, we need to generate sufficient foreign exchange, and such prescription basically could not be beneficial for the large country where we have the large population, like we have 1.3 billion people in the country. For them, the import of such large quantity is not possible at all, and India entry as an importer of cereals actually can significantly influence the world cereal prices. If India start importing of the wheat or rice, price of wheat and rice will increase tremendously in the international market. So, food security in India is not less than the issue of national security. It is just like in national security, if you want to, because we have large population in the country. Therefore, self-sufficiency in the food must be the foremost goal of the agriculture sector. then the goal of self-sufficiency the food could be constant in future also, because there are lot of shrinking in our resources like land, water and other resources due to increased diversion of our agricultural resources towards the non-agriculture resources. We are seeing the peri-urban areas, lot of agriculture land has been converted for the housing society. So, there are shrinking of resources is there for the agriculture sectors. Therefore, technology transfer is a very much important to improve the food grain productivity per unit of land, water and other inputs including the human labor. Then livelihood security is another important objective in agriculture sector, in important goals in agriculture sector. Basically, agriculture provides direct employment to majority of the country workforce. Around 52% of the country workforce is engaged in agriculture sector, and this agriculture is basically backbone for the rural livelihood security system. You know, we have around 70% of rural population totally depend on agriculture sector for their income, for their livelihood, and the protection of the livelihood of the rural household should be the major goal as per the, many people say the livelihood security of the agriculture. And for achieving this goal, actually government support and provide incentives to the farmers, that is very important, particularly for the small and marginal holdings, and through trade intervention in terms of the import through the tariff or quota or restriction in agriculture trade. The National Commission on Farmers that recommended that the sustainable livelihood bank in place of the microcredit bank. This should be through the backward linkage through the technology and credit. When the farmers are there, they need to be supported for supplying of the inputs, for supplying of the credit to them, and they also should have the forward linkage in terms of the marketing, the processing, post harvest management. So, that should be the backward and forward linkage should be there for providing livelihood security in the rural area. And there is a need for effective integration of on farm and non farm livelihood opportunity, particularly in the rural area. And we need to increase the agro based industry in rural area. We need to increase the income of the artisans. So, we need to have proper integration between the farm sector and non farm sector, and this goal is very important for achieving the equitable, inclusive and sustainable development of the rural areas. And actually, we have seen there are lot of migration from the rural area to urban area, and if you want to reduce this migration, if you want to remove this migration, we need to develop the livelihood opportunity in the rural areas. And income generation of agriculture sector is another important goal, so very vital goal. And the economic idea of earlier economists like Physiocrates and Adam Smith, they said the agriculture was, they considered the agriculture as a source for generating surpluses, labor, saving, foreign exchange for the development of industrial sectors. And Physiocrates said that the agriculture was the only sector that generates surplus, and therefore it should be taxed. And the agriculture was not only seen as the source of income growth for the farmers and agriculture worker. Even the economists in the 50s and 60s, they wrote about the role of agriculture in economic development, and they wrote less about the income enhancement of the farmers. So, as per this economist, basically the major focus should be the agriculture development, but the ultimate objective is to develop the industrial sector, for overall economic development of the industrial sectors. Their focus was more there to promote the industrial sector. But today there are lot of income gap between the agriculture sector and non-agriculture sectors. This gap is increased over the period of time, and the ratio of per capita net state domestic product non-agriculture to agriculture is increasing. It is now 4:1, means the contribution of the other than agriculture sector is 80% in the country, and the contribution of agriculture is the less than 20%. The goal to generate adequate income for the peasant and worker is vital, because we want to uplift the rural population and we want to accelerate the growth of the rural economy, and it is important for sustaining and achieving the higher GDP growth rate in secondary and tertiary sectors. Sometimes if you want to achieve the 8% growth rate in the economy, there should be 4% growth rate in the agriculture sector. So, so it is very important for sustaining or achieving the high GDP in the country. Then farmers and farm workers constitute the larger proportion of the consumers. As farmers farm income grow, more demand for goods and services like consumers goods, the capital goods and services from the non-agriculture sectors. And farmers in several regions of the country, they are committing suicides because they have the very less income. And the basic goal of agriculture should be the income in profit generation rather than just making a subsistence living in the agriculture sectors. And the government have goal of doubling farmers income. So, this is the government is working. There are 2-3 approaches, like they want to reduce the cost of the cultivation and they want to increase the income of the farmers by providing the price support, by adding the value added activity in agriculture sector. So, they want to double the farmers income. And the another objective of agriculture sector is the supply of cheap raw material to the agro industry. Industrial sector heavily depend on the surpluses generated in the farm sector. Sometimes price policy aims to keep the agriculture produce price at low level to benefit the industrial sectors. Because the government or the policies, they want to support the industrial growth. So, they want to provide them the raw material at cheap cost or at low cost. And many food and agro based industries survive on the cheap raw material supplied by the agriculture sectors, like cotton, textile, the sugar industry, grain mills are highly employment providing sector in the country. And horticulture and livestock sector are also creating a lot of employment and income opportunity for the workforce. And all these industries like cotton or the sugar industries get the raw material from the agriculture sector. Although dependency of the industrial sector on the agriculture sector has declined in the recent years, there are many reasons, particularly use of the knowledge based on capital intensive technology in the industrial sector. That is why their dependence on agriculture is declining over the period of time. But the agriculture still is the base for the number of industries, including the cotton, textile, leather goods, and drinks and beverage. We have multiple goal in the agriculture sectors. Apart from the primary function of production of the foods and fibers, agriculture also performs various other activities, various other functions like conservation of land and water resources, the protection of natural environment and biodiversity, the provision of safe and high quality food, the preservation of rural landscape and heritage, the socio-economic and cultural development of the rural areas. And production of this goal or this output cannot be done other than the agriculture sector. So, the agriculture sector is very important to maintain our natural resources, land and water, to have good environment or diversity, protected environment and diversity, the provision of safe and quality food, maintaining the rural landscape. So, these are the different multifunctional goals we have, and all such output, all this goal cannot be basically they are the largely public goods. Public goods, the market can hardly provide them. So, we cannot purchase such things. Good environment we cannot purchase from the market. So, only the agriculture sector that can support, and basically farm lobby for that purpose. Actually, other interest groups argue for sufficient government budgetary support for achieving these goals. And developed country provide huge subsidy for their farmers under the permissible blue box for achieving this goal, and developing countries should also provide the adequate support to their farmers for this purpose, for achieving this goal. And the agriculture is the way of life. It is much more than simply the means of the production of food and fiber. So, they also provide many things which we cannot get from the other sectors. So, there should be adequate support under the WTO for the domestic support to the agriculture sectors. And now we can sum up this session that identification of agriculture sector goal is very critical for the formulation of an appropriate policy in agriculture sectors. And in case of Indian agriculture, sufficiency in food, the livelihood security, income generation, supply of the cheap raw material to the agro processing units are the primary goals of the agriculture sector. Then conservation of land and water resources, protection of the natural environment and biodiversity, the provision of the safe and high quality food, preservation of rural landscape and heritage, and socio-economic and cultural development of rural areas could be another major goals from the agriculture sector. Thank you.